Hey, everybody. Welcome to the weekly podcast. A little deviation from our sermon recaps this summer. Pastor Brian is in Kenya, I think officially.
Yeah, he's there.
He is there. So I have the illustrious Trent Peacock with me today.
Ooh, illustrious.
Yeah, I'm setting you up.
You are setting
for a big
up.
win. You know,
High bar.
I had Brandon on last time, or 2 times ago.
I saw a little bit of that. I didn't watch the whole thing. I got bored. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Got him. So you have you have a low bar to breach.
Jump over, yeah.
But thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's good to back on the podcast table.
Have you been here before? Not on this one. Since I've been here.
Not since you've been driving this ship. Yeah. No.
Well, welcome.
Yeah, Philip and I had a good 3-year run at podcasting. Started during the COVID years.
Mm-hmm.
So we really enjoyed that. We did it like once a week.
Yeah.
So
that's what we try to do here.
Yeah.
It doesn't really happen. So we just try it.
You just do your best.
Well, we got to call it something else because it's been sermon recap. And like we've been going through the sermon and extra stuff or whatever. But we haven't been doing that for a while now. But I think the people...
They enjoyed the banter.
The public, our public.
You've got to give the people what they want.
Yeah, no, but our manager, when I was touring, the guy who managed our group, he said, "Boys, nobody likes it but the people."
Oh.
And so that was the last thing he said to us every time we walked on stage. Nobody likes it but the people. And he's right.
That's what I say. You always got to keep them coming back.
Yeah, don't give them too much.
That's
don't
right.
leave them shortchanged.
Just enough.
Anyway, all right, Trent Peacock.
Yep.
How long you been on staff here?
I have been on staff here since 2016, so 8 years.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you came how long after Brian?
I like to make it known that I was Brian's first mistake here at Church.
Longest running mistake.
Yeah, so Brian came in September.
Okay.
And then he was here basically a year. And then the next year he brought me on.
Because you guys knew each other.
Yeah, Brian and I have a long history together. We served together for like 8 years in Charlotte, North Carolina together. And
Hickory Grove.
Hickory Grove.
Yeah. Where you were?
I was there 11 years as a student pastor.
It's a long time.
So a lot of great things happen.
I got my start leading worship in student ministry. And then in college, on Wednesday nights, like, churches would call my school, Anderson University,
right?
Say, hey, we need a worship leader, whatever. So they would send a bunch of us out, guys that they knew were doing it. And I realized so quickly, God did not call me to student ministry. So I commend you for 11 years of what I'd consider purgatory.
And then I went then I kept going. Yeah. Then I had another 5 years here in Georgia.
Okay.
That's what brought us back to Georgia.
And that was at Christ Place?
Christ Place, yes. And
first, what was it called before that?
It was Blackshear Place when I first got there.
So here's a little fun fact. My music minister growing up at Rock Springs Baptist in Easley came from Blackshear Place.
No way.
His name is Don Gibson.
Okay.
He's been at Rock Springs now for probably 30 years.
Wow.
So
he left.
Yeah, at least 25.
And went there. And
he left Blackshear. Yeah, he's been there since. He is a legend. Man. I mean, just a beautiful example of faithfulness, longevity in ministry, faithfulness to serve. And those are the only 2 churches he was in. But man, just a great guy, has a wonderful family. I love Don Gibson. He's a hero. So he was at Blackshear Place.
Blackshear Place Baptist. And
then he
Oakwood, North Carolina. Oakwood, Georgia.
Okay, which is near.
It's near Flowery Branch, Georgia. Gainesville, Georgia.
Okay, so you still live in Flowery Branch.
I do still live in FB.
Yep, you make the hour-plus commute.
It's not that long.
Well, you basically live in Kentucky.
That's according to Brian. I still live in South Carolina, but no,
it takes you a shorter amount of time to get to my mom's house than it takes me.
It's about halfway. Yeah. No, it's it's funny because when I did take the position here, that was obviously a thing that we looked at and had to analyze with 2 younger boys and what that looked like. Our kids are in public school. I know, gasp. And so
mine too. Don't feel bad.
So we had to really analyze
Raising
that.
a bunch of heathens.
I know.
Liberal heathens.
But we felt like for our family it was the best choice. And,
sure.
I just said, hey, I want to be a man of the people. Everybody drives 45 minutes to work in Atlanta.
It's true.
So
whether it's 5 miles or 50 miles,
doesn't matter.
It's all 45 minutes.
So I wanted to connect and wanted to relate to that.
Well, you're a man of the people. Mm. You're the everyman. Okay, so backing up before your ministry career calling started.
Yeah,
you're from Georgia.
I am from Woodstock, Georgia.
Okay.
Arrived there when I was around 3 years old. My dad was a dentist in Woodstock.
Where were you before Woodstock?
I was born in San Diego. He was in the Navy. My dad.
Okay, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. So Dad came back to Georgia. He's also from Georgia, and set up his practice in Woodstock.
He's a dentist, right?
He is.
Still?
He still practices. Yeah, he sold his practice and now contract dentist does contract work with another dentist.
So what does he have to say about your teeth?
He says that they are a disappointment to his career.
This is not a case study.
That's right. Do not be like that. Yeah. No.
Yeah, you have nice teeth. They're straight.
They're straight.
They're still yours.
Yeah, they're still
That's
original.
half the battle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So.
Okay, so you were born and raised in Woodstock.
Yep.
And then you went to Liberty?
Went to Liberty for my undergrad.
Is that where you met Lacey?
No, that is another fun factual
Get
story.
into that in a minute.
Okay.
Went to Liberty.
Got my undergrad in Bachelor of Science of Religion. So did you know Bachelor of Science is considered a religion degree? So science and religion.
I guess.
Some say don't mix, but they did there. So
better you than me.
So that's what I got there. But my emphasis at Liberty was ministry and specifically student ministry.
Okay. Then you went to Southeastern.
Yeah, I came back home for a year, did a year internship with Woodstock, First Baptist Woodstock. Okay.
Yeah.
My home church. And then went to Southeastern Theological Seminary and got my...
Did you know Brian? Because that's where he went to.
No, Brian was after me.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got my MDiv, Master's of Divinity, at Southeastern.
Are you fluent in Greek and Hebrew?
I did not. I took the biblical languages.
The minimum requirements.
Did get my golden seal on that. Yeah. Actually, fun fact, for MDiv back then, might be different now, but back then, languages was not a requirement for your Master's of Divinity. But I was like, you know what? I think it would be a waste of this opportunity not to take it. So I did.
You can do hard things.
We can do hard things.
Yeah. Well, English is hard for you, much less
sometimes, Greek. Yeah, especially spelling. But that's a whole nother.
It's a separate story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story.
That I'll never let him live down, ever.
So all the people that love me know that that's true. But yeah, so MDiv, my emphasis with my master's, like Brian's, is apologetics and languages. Mm-hmm. My emphasis was in counseling.
Yes. Gotcha.
So
you do have a kind disposition. Like, I'd rather talk to you about issues than Brian.
Oh. Okay.
Or Brandon, for that matter.
Well, that's probably true.
Brandon, suck it up, buttercup. Brian, next. Like, what are you talking about?
Stop it.
Like, yeah. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
Period. But I feel like you'd empathize. You'd relate.
I would try.
Maybe.
Or at least not a lot.
I'd pretend to.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's so hard. Well, I mean, I'm a product of a lot of therapy, a lot of counseling, so I'm a big believer in it. Absolutely. Well, it helps
proponent, big fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think our brains, as children, and especially in adolescence, we developed the tools to handle conflict, to handle difficult things in that stage of life. Well, the problem with that is we encounter much more complex issues as we grow up.
Yeah.
And if we stop developing those along the way, you wind up handling conflict and problems, that are complex in nature as a 20, 30-year-old with the brain of a 13-year-old.
Right.
Which
is very unstable.
No, yeah. And so, I mean, I had to go to counseling for a lot of reasons, but to develop that. And I mean, I'm a huge proponent. I think everybody should go to counseling.
Healthy or not healthy?
Yeah. Well, and I've been at my worst and I've been at my best, and both, I'd say, are equally healthy.
I agree with you.
I see somebody now, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So
it is.
Which, small plug, if you feel like you need counseling or desire that, Trent has a great connection that we have through the Georgia Baptist Mission Board.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to say Georgia GBC.
It used to be GBC.
Yeah, now it's not.
Yeah, so they changed it.
Anyway, we have a connection to provide some counseling at a reduced cost or possibly no cost to church members. So if you need that, we can get with Trent.
Definitely get you connected to some people.
Okay, so you went to seminary, started your ministry career. You're in North Carolina, back in Georgia.
Went straight from Wake Forest, where seminary was, and went straight to Charlotte.
Yep.
And began.
Do you think you'd be a North Carolinian for life?
It's funny. I did not know that I was going to stay so long in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But we loved North Carolina.
That's where my wife was raised there.
Yeah, it's a good state.
She went to Chapel Hill. Go Heels.
Go Heels.
Go America.
Yeah.
We don't like Duke.
No.
At all. Tell me, okay, speaking of sports teams.
Oh, boy.
This is where Trent and I...
This is going to get off the rails.
I cannot for the life of me understand your affinity for Florida State. It helps me because I give you so much junk about it.
Right.
And it's fun.
Right.
But why? Like you and I went to the Florida State Clemson game.
Right.
This past year.
Yes, and I was on my best behavior.
You were on your... I was very impressed. It was a heartbreak.
It was a demonstration of self-control.
Yeah, well, you matured well. Your wife was very proud.
She was kicking me the whole time.
Yeah, shut up. All right, so Florida State, why?
So here's the short story of it. My dad... So, as I've already mentioned, grew up in Georgia, and my dad liked sports, but never like diehard Bulldog or any of that. It's just not who he was. He's a baseball guy. He loved baseball.
Yeah, sure. Go Braves.
Obviously, Braves fan. But so I started playing Pop Warner football, and our uniforms looked similar to Florida State when I started playing football.
So you have no real connection.
No connection.
Just like the uniforms.
I just had
looked like yours.
It looked like me, So
okay, so that would have been the era of like Deion Sanders.
Well, yeah, those
guys.
And then so once I started kind of learning about Bobby Bowden, who he was and what his beliefs were.
Wonderful man. Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm down with this team.
You're all in.
Let's hook the bandwagon to it and go.
Boy, did you.
I did.
And I admire that.
Yeah. So that's really the fun story about why I'm connected to Florida State. My uncle did swim at Florida State for like 1 year, and then he came back to Georgia.
Well,
so
maybe you should have taken a hint.
Yeah, I don't know. But so that's the whole affinity with Florida State.
Provided me a lot of fodder, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I hope to continue to give you a really hard time.
Go Knowles.
No, go Tigers. Which I know all of you go Dogs, whatever. Yeah, that's the strangest thing about Georgia. When we moved to Texas, there were a ton of Baylor fans in the Dallas area.
Right.
It's either Baylor or UT or A&M. Those are the big three. Occasionally you get a Texas Tech guy, but it's rare.
Right.
The folks in the Panhandle tend to stay up there.
Maybe Texas Christian every now and then.
No.
You didn't maybe any of those?
No, I mean, if you went to Fort Worth, maybe. But yeah, most of them were Baylor grads or Baylor fans or UT or A&M. Had a lot of A&M fans. I never knew the intensity of a rivalry until I moved to Texas and watched Texas-Oklahoma. That was nuts. Playing the Cotton Bowl every year, like it is wild how deeply those fans are entrenched in there. But, they were nice people. Well, then we moved to Georgia, and all of a sudden, these people start barking at us. Like, what in the world? Why do you Bulldog fans bark at people? And all the places I've been to all 50 states, several countries. I've never heard anybody do that, to support their team that way. Like, I told my wife, I was like, this is so silly. It'd be like me saying, go Tigers, rawr. Like, okay. All I hear is, go Dog.
Yeah, I mean, they're very vocal fans.
I guess. And I have a lot to be vocal about the past few years.
Do you ever get the two barks and go sick 'em?
I don't know. Probably.
Probably.
Oh,
yeah. There's a lot of barking.
I love sports.
I do too. You and I have that in common. I think you and I on staff are probably the most sports fans.
Brandon's a big baseball guy.
Brandon pretends.
Well, his son plays.
Yeah, Brandon likes baseball.
And then his oldest son plays.
And he's really got nothing to talk about with football.
No, he hasn't
really
for a
while.
He's a Florida fan, so there's nothing to talk about. Got him.
We just got a lot of hate mail on this station, right? On this podcast.
I don't know if there's any Florida fans out there. Okay, so yes, big sports fans. I love sports of all kinds. I love teams, and I enjoy golf. Like I enjoy watching golf, but I enjoy golf a lot more when it's like the Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
Right. It's like Team USA versus the world, and we're the best.
Yeah.
Because we're Americans.
You're probably super pumped about the Olympics then.
Oh yeah, I love the Olympics. Like I'm the guy that will stay up late or get up super early
and watch.
But I love to watch the swimming. That's always fun, just because it's real intense. I enjoy the track and field events.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I love. I don't know. Is soccer in the spring? Yeah. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll enjoy the soccer, but I like the World Cup better than watching Olympic soccer.
Right.
I think it matters more. I love the Olympics. It's a lot of fun. The opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies. It's my favorite part.
Really? That's funny.
Yeah. It's just cool to see all the parade of nations. And like you have people at war with each other, and yet they can find some commonality.
They're walking around the same stadium.
Yeah, with a torch. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, torch the place,
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so Hickory Grove, back to Christ Place. You come here, but not as a student pastor.
That's right.
All right, so help us.
Diverted from student ministry.
Yeah.
Some would say it was God rescuing me.
I would.
I would never think that. I loved my years as a student pastor. I really, really did.
Well, you are kind of the perpetual goofball.
Yeah, I can be immature.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's okay.
That's a harsh way to say it. You're just goofy. You don't take yourself too seriously?
Yeah, I don't. You can't. You can't as a student pastor.
You're always good for a laugh.
I'm always good to be made
At
fun of.
your expense.
Yes, sure. I don't care. Yeah, that's one thing you learn in student ministry. That's why you're a survivor. You don't. If you can't laugh at yourself, then get out.
Yep.
So
you shifted here to more of a family ministry.
Yeah, discipleship pastor.
Yep.
So kind of Brian called me. He had some questions about, ministry, specifically student ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And, in that conversation, we began to think, he said, I don't know what I said, honestly. I don't know what I said to this day, but something I said sparked in his brain like, hey, maybe he would be willing to take a step out of student ministry to come be my discipleship pastor.
I think it was, hey, I need somebody to make fun of.
Probably.
Got him.
Got him. But yeah, so I didn't necessarily, I wrestled for a while because
it's hard.
But I also realized I was not getting any younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of felt like a used car salesman at times.
Yeah. Well, isn't that a weird dynamic? Like I think youth pastors, student pastors, and worship leaders really fall into that category more than any other church staff position. Like I have that hanging over me all the time. I mean, I'm only 34. I know I'm an old soul, but in my 12 years of doing this vocationally, full staff on staff at a church, full time on staff at a church. Thank you. I have noticed, like I'm at the age now where the worship pastors I'm seeing getting hired are younger than me.
Yeah.
Like
you're like no younger than the hip cool guy.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Well, okay. So it's probably the same feeling I think everybody has, like when you watch a sporting event and you're like, oh my gosh, these kids are 18, 19 playing college football.
Yeah.
And you feel like you are still there. Like you're still that age.
You want to be.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Put me in, coach. You know, it's like, oh, it's not that way anymore. But yeah, I worry about that all the time. It's like, okay, is there an age where you kind of age out?
Well, I think you're going to be safe because here's the great thing about worship pastors.
Because I'm amazing.
You're talented and just knock it out of the park all the time. And as long as you stop wearing skinny jeans at the appropriate age, you'll be all right.
Agreed.
There's some guys.
I think I've hit that age.
Some guys just can't figure that out, Yeah,
I'm a slim, straight guy.
Yeah.
In every way. Well, maybe not slim. A little portly.
We'll just stay with the straight, right? Yeah. But yeah, he's about to make this thing go way off rails, and I'm holding it together.
We're going to get flagged.
But yeah, so I think that's the thing with student ministry is.
So I'm sure those thoughts are rolling through your head.
Well, it got to a point where I was like, okay, I've been in student ministry now for 16 years. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of experience. And I really felt like what I was really needing, it was either to serve maybe as a, what's the way I want to say this? Like more of a vision driver of a ministry versus one carrying out the vision, So I was going to need some younger guys.
More of a strategist.
Right. Come up underneath me to pull off the ministry, but yet me help them with that.
Did you have the thought run through your brain, like as you were considering coming to church on Main or First Baptist Snowball at the time, like your kids being in your student ministry? Like that would scare me to death.
Actually, that was one of the hardest things because I was looking forward to my kids being in my ministry.
Okay, see, I would have the opposite.
No.
Like I would get worried about that as a worship pastor, like having my children, be active parts of the music ministry. That scares me.
For me, I was like, that was the one thing that also made the decision hard because I was like, John David is my oldest. He wasn't quite the age of student ministry, but it was not far, and I was like, oh man, I would love to have John David in my student ministry. Mm-hmm. Well, they grew up in my ministry really, because they were always around, so they technically were growing up in my student ministries, but as a student, I wanted to be their student pastor. But that didn't happen. God had other plans, so brought us here. And, that's kind of a fun story too, because it was a shift. Some people are like, well, you're not really doing anything that drastically different. I mean, you're just going to be discipling adults versus, teenagers.
There's a big shift there.
Yeah, they act a little bit differently.
Yeah. Sometimes.
A little more mouthy, know. Right. I don't know. So different ways.
Yeah, but absolutely. More disgruntled.
Yeah. I'm just going to hold those thoughts right there. Pause. I caught it mentally. It's filtered it.
Look at that self-control. Woo. The Lord is doing a large work in your life.
So, but for me, it was like, okay, God, what do you want to do in my life? And so I took about 3 months after Brian, came to me and asked me to consider it. Took about 3 months of praying about that decision. Yeah. In fact, I did not even visit this campus.
Really?
Never came.
Wow.
Didn't visit a service before I gave Brian my answer. Not to sound super spiritual, but really, I know my flesh. My flesh would have probably, and at the time we hadn't renovated. Yeah, sure. And there's, I know some of you are big fans of the purple carpet and gold and brass everywhere. Not my style, so I might have made a fleshly judgment had I made a visit.
Sure.
So Lacey came and visited with my mother-in-law for our service, but I never did because I really wanted to make a decision based on God's Holy Spirit leading and not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So, but God led us here. So
you've been here 8 years. You've recently had another shift in your ministry and just responsibilities
coming up on a year.
Yeah. Right as I came on board.
Yeah.
You're now what we call a mobilization pastor. I think old school missions pastor.
Right.
Global evangelism, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So talk to us. Well, let's put a pin in that because I want to end with that.
Okay. Sticking that pin right there.
Right here. Just exactly right there. Tell us about your family.
Yeah. So I've already mentioned them a little bit. So Lacey and I have been married this summer, 25 years.
100% the better part of you.
Without doubt.
Yeah. Lacey's
definitely outkicked the coverage there. Yeah. So
she can usually spell too.
She can spell wonderfully. Yes.
Sidebar: the story I alluded to earlier. Trent misspelled a word, and it was an unfortunate word. And I said to him, "Run this by your wife. Like, make sure your wife spell checks this because she can spell."
And my response
was, "You're dyslexic." Why don't I
am dyslexic.
Yeah, I know. Why did you try that?
Although this had nothing to do with dyslexia, but I did ask Siri, and she steered me wrong. Siri can't spell either. But anyway,
yeah, but Lacey can.
I don't think Lacey was around at the time when I was writing that text message. If all those that are in the men's collective, you know what we're referring to.
Gosh, it provided some good fodder.
Yes, it still will. It's going to continue. But what were we talking? Oh, we're talking about
your family.
My family. So yeah, Lacey, and I've been married for 25 years, and that's hard to believe.
Yeah,
honestly. This summer, we met. Fun fact. So I told you I left Liberty, graduated from Liberty. We both went to Liberty the same years.
But you didn't know each other.
But we didn't know each other. We had mutual friends, but we did not hang out together. My friends were way cooler. And so she didn't hang out with me. And so we knew each other, had mutual friends. Like, we didn't know each other, but we, had mutual friends and knew about each other. In fact, my friends and I, we met. So I leave Liberty. I come to Woodstock for a year internship. She lives Liberty and comes to Atlanta area. She lived in Duluth area.
Okay, yeah.
And she worked for John Maxwell. That was her first job. His organization, not actually for him, but the organization. And her aunt and my aunt and our cousins were all the same age, and they knew each other really well. And they, had that relationship, family relationship. Mm-hmm. So my aunt, or her aunt, was talking to my aunt one time and said, hey, my niece moved in. She's living with us. She doesn't know anybody in the Atlanta area. Didn't you have a nephew that went to Liberty? And my aunt was like, yeah, I did. So
and he's also single.
Yeah. Connected us. And this was back in the 1900s, we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah. We had to plan things.
We had to plan things. Yeah. So we went on our first date, which a blind date. Uh-huh. And so that was a fun date. First and last blind date.
That's probably a good thing.
But so my friends and I at school, my college buddies, and we had nicknames for all the pretty girls on campus because if we didn't know them.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Lacey's nickname was Kelly Kapowski from Saved by the Bell. So I'll never forget.
Because she looked like her?
Yeah, she looked like Kelly Kapowski, Tiffany Amber Thiessen a little bit.
That's funny.
So
every 90s boyhood crush.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
You got the girl.
I got the girl.
Good for you. Because you were Screech. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I was definitely. No, I was later for sure.
Next joke.
And all the people on the podcast are, who are they talking about?
Yeah, go watch Saved by the Bell. You'll understand.
Gen X kids will know. But anyway, so we meet on this blind date. And
somebody's calling you.
Is it me? Oh, sorry.
Middle of the podcast. Sorry, whoever that was, he'll call you back.
Rookie mistake. Oh. And so I'll never forget, like, I couldn't wait to the date. I wanted to be on the date, but after the date, I couldn't wait to call my friends.
You got a date with Kelly Kapowski?
I did. That was the first words out of my mouth. You'll never believe who I just went out with.
That's funny.
Kelly Kapowski. And they're like, no way. Yeah.
That's so cool.
So anyway, that's how we met. And we dated for like a year and a half. Uh-huh. I went to my first semester of seminary. We got engaged, came back, did extension seminary here. I, too, got to work at John Maxwell's office for a semester, and then got married, moved off to seminary, and the rest is 25-year history.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
You got two boys.
19 and 17. John David is going to be a sophomore at Berry College.
He's playing football.
There. He plays tight end. And so...
He's a large man.
He is much bigger than me.
Yeah. Doesn't take much.
But I can still take him.
Yeah.
I try him every now and then to see what he's got.
Just to test your ability.
Yeah. It's called dad law. There's a way that
you
your
will
son,
always win.
That he does enough respect that he's not going to hurt me yet.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Or if he does, I won't let him know.
No.
And then Carson is 17. Carson's going to he'll be a junior this year in high school. Yeah.
You're almost an empty nester.
Yeah, so we're getting close to that.
Yeah. That's what I was talking to Brandon about when he was on the podcast. I said, man, you could have been an empty nester.
Yeah, he messed that up big time.
Well, Eli's awesome. I like it. But
that's true.
Eli's of the Roscoe children. I don't know. Erin's my favorite just because she babysits for us. And super easy.
Brett's got that cool haircut too, though.
And a lot of it.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. So yeah, you're almost an empty nester. Yeah. It's exciting.
It is. It's kind of, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little nervous about it. Like, I don't know what to do.
Like, what do we do with all this time?
Right. We've been running our kids around the sports since they were little. So we don't.
Yeah. I feel like that's forever away for us. But then, Shelby said something to me the other night. She's like, we have 10 more years with Ellie. I'm like, whew. Yeah. That one. That scared me. 10 more Christmases at home. Like, 10 more summers. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, and she's my little girl too. So that was painful.
Yeah.
Okay. So great family.
Boys are awesome.
Your boys are awesome.
We're blessed.
They're funny.
They're very
Carson's
funny.
hilarious.
My youngest is, he's a lot like Lacey.
Yeah.
No, not
smart.
At all. I mean, he is smart like Lacey, but
he's the goofball like you.
He is very hilarious, and John David's very. He's funny too. He's sneaky. He's just kind of calm.
Mm-hmm. He's an oldest child. Like I'm an oldest child.
Yeah.
So like we push that boundary to see how far we can get it.
Yep.
And just to that line, and then sometimes we'll just dance over it.
Yeah. He's really responsible, so I'm proud of him.
Yeah. You hear that, John David?
Yeah.
You're responsible.
Carson is too. Carson's my entrepreneur. He's going to, make daddy and mommy rich one day.
Ain't that the goal? I told Hampton that the other day. He wants to be a pilot. He wants to be a Navy pilot. My dad's a pilot.
Yeah.
And so he was all excited. He put on his pilot suit, and my dad put his on, and we were at my dad's this past weekend. And so they were having a little moment, and Hampton he wants to go to the military just like Papaw. Be a pilot just like Papaw.
That's awesome.
And so I said, buddy, just remember, I need you to take care of me. Like, I need you to make enough money to fund my lifestyle.
All he needs them to do is make that one jingle like Christmas shoes, and you'll be set.
I know. Well, Christmas shoes. It's the worst song. Like, it just is. But it gets so much radio play. I've got a friend who wrote a very popular Christmas song that is Christian in nature, but it's been recorded a lot. And so one time I played piano for him, and he sent a plane to come get me.
Hello.
And so I was like, wow. So I flew to the date. It was 2 states away, flew to it, got on the plane, played the concert, went back. And I said, hey, man, thanks so much. Like, I did not expect that. I would have figured out a commercial flight, whatever. He was like, don't thank me, thank Mary. Because he wrote Mary, Did You Know?
Also the worst Christmas song ever.
Okay. No. That's where you're wrong.
We've already had this debate.
I know. Did she know? No, she didn't know.
She did know.
I don't think she did.
The angel told her.
Okay, but not everything.
So she knew.
She knew he was the Son of God.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but that's...
So nothing's impossible with
But that's
God.
the last line of the song.
So did he know he was going to walk on the water?
She pondered these things in her heart.
It does.
That means she thought more about them than what she was told.
It's a bad song.
I disagree. It's been recorded by every major artist out there.
All right, here's what we need you guys to do. If you're watching the podcast.
In the chat.
We need you to put good song or bad song.
For Mary, Did You Know?
And the criteria is based on theology, not whether you like the tune or not.
Okay. Well, why'd you have to bring that into it? And if theology is the marker, then we got a lot of bad songs out there.
We have a lot to worry about.
A lot of bad songs out there.
Yeah, we do.
That's why we don't sing some.
I know. You're very good at that. You're very intentional, I will say.
Well, and here's the other thing. There are a lot of hymns that have bad theology.
Surprisingly, yes.
There are a lot of hymns that you can't sing because they're unsingable.
That's right.
There's a lot of contemporary or modern music that is unsingable. There's a lot of bad theology. There's a lot of stuff with great theology.
There's a lot of Southern gospel with terrible theology.
Oh, boy. Yes. Having spent 3 years in that industry, I can attest.
Again, we're just throwing grenades right now. People are lighting us, going to light up this podcast. We've heard Mary, Did You Know?
You can appreciate
Southern gospel.
Yeah, right. You can appreciate the style, and you can appreciate the way it's delivered, but not, acknowledge, or that you can't acknowledge that they're, theological errors.
Yeah. Well, most of the hymns were written off bar tunes, so.
That's a fact, Jack. I remember telling that to a lady one time at the first church I was served. She got so upset with me. She was, staunchly Southern Baptist, teetotaler,
KJV only.
Church lady to the nines. And I told her, I said, man, like you do realize most of these hymns were written off of bar tunes because that's what they knew. That's how these hymns got passed around. Mm-hmm. That did not happen. I said, well, if I could tell you Amazing Grace was written off of Negro Spiritual, how would you feel about that?
Hopefully she felt good about it.
I don't know. So anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So coming back full circle.
We have a pen right here.
We have a pen right here. I've unpinned it.
Okay.
So you've recently made a shift in your duties.
Yes.
At Church on Main.
New role, new opportunities.
And I think it's awesome because it's, something that hasn't been in the forefront of our ministry here as a church in quite a while. Mm-hmm. And so we're seeing a huge shift toward what I would argue is the main thing we're here to do.
Right.
Is that, go and make disciples, baptizing everyone in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, going to all the nations, right. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the uttermost parts of the earth. Mm-hmm. And so you have shifted into a mobilization role,
right.
missions role.
Yep.
So help us understand what that's looked like, this year, because this is really the first year you've really been on it, and you've heard a lot about it in our services as we've commissioned teams. But help us understand the vision of where this is going.
Yeah, those are really good questions. So as you mentioned, this is kind of new. Like, not to say that Church on Main, First Baptist Snellville has never had a good mission presence.
Sure.
I don't want to ever say that because obviously we have.
Yeah.
And this church has been responsible for a lot of missions around the world. In fact, I love to tell this story. Our mission partner, and I don't even know if you know this, but our mission partner in Kenya, Damon Davenport, he actually, before ever, like him and Brian knew each other, but as he started his ministry in Kenya, First Baptist Snellville was one of biggest supporters of starting that ministry in Kenya.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that big thrust back then is still going, still strong. And our pastor's been active in that ministry for 18 years before ever coming here. So that's a cool, fun story. But we've always had a, mission-minded church. I think there's a shift in mission culture, from the heydays, as we'll say, to now.
Well, missions has become a lot more difficult globally because of government crackdowns or just access to regions. But the Baptist faith, the Christian world isn't as accepted as maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's one thing too. Going back to the heritage of Southern Baptists, have always been super active in global missions.
Yep.
Very active. But anyway, so being this role now, so being on the discipleship side of things, right? So a lot of people see discipleship as what happens in the church, although I've never really saw it just that way. Because as we are disciples, you can't split, when you reference, Matthew 28. You can't split discipleship and evangelism.
Sure.
But the modern church really likes to do that. Like, I'm not called to evangelism.
Yeah.
Or I'm not called to that. And I'm like, no, we as believers, as a believer, good thing this doesn't have
nice things.
As a believer, we are called to both discipleship and evangelism. And to me, it's just
two sides of the same coin.
It's a process, right? You can't, it'd be like stopping the process of a creation. You're making something or building something, a house, and you just put some walls up and you didn't put a roof on.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. So the same with evangelism and discipleship. So for me now, I get to kind of build out more of our discipleship process, and that's still an ongoing process. But we've built that out for 8 years. That was a fun thing to build, and now I really kind of get to come alongside now and build the other side of that, and see where we're going to go and what God's going to lead us to do as a church. And so I'm still praying through a lot of that, because you asked me like, what is the vision or what are we doing as for missions? And I'm still praying through a lot of that. I don't want to say I have it, we're going to be this,
Well, yeah, it evolves.
Yeah.
As things change.
Well, I want to have a strategy that makes sense.
Sure.
Sometimes I think churches, I don't want to be critical here, but I think sometimes the strategy of churches for missions is, let's just find all the relatives of the people that are in our congregation and we just go support them. Which that's a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's not a strategy.
Sure.
I want to build strategic partnerships wherever we are, whether we're, in Nepal, or whether we're in Kenya, or whether we're in Montana or New York or any of those places. I want to build partnerships that are strategic, and meaning by that is we're not just sending money, but we're sending resources, we're sending people, and we're actively engaged in what's going on in that mission. And
well, I think too, we said earlier, discipleship and evangelism, two sides of the same coin. And a huge component of discipleship is equipping. The equipping part of it, equipping a believer with, proper apologetics, proper theology, proper missiology, all those things that matter to the life to make a well-rounded believer, right? That's under the umbrella of discipleship. And you can't do any of that without equipping someone to have those tools.
Right.
And I would argue what you're doing now is taking what you've worked for the past 8 years in equipping people with the gospel and equipping people with discipleship and the tools to do that, to just flip that coin over and do the same thing with missions.
That's right.
In the evangelism part of it, right?
And giving them opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Giving them the vehicles to go.
And that's a good point and a good segue. I mean, just this year, we're halfway through the year, we've sent teams to Montana, Honduras, Nepal, Kenya. Am I missing any?
Augusta,
yeah. We had a team that went there. We've got stuff planned for this rest of this summer. Guatemala's coming up. We got stuff for the fall and into the winter. So I'm super excited about that. We have, church planting partners. That's part of your responsibilities. We have church planting partners all over the United States that we're partnered with in New York and Montana.
Specifically there.
Yeah. And so we're really looking as a church, like, how can we focus our energies and efforts into those places, to advance the gospel.
100%. And those things are involved. Yeah, there's lots of great things happening. And that, like you said, that's just kind of like when I took over in July of last year, it was like, okay, what are we going to do?
Sure.
Who are we going to be? I'm like, okay, we got to strengthen our current partnerships. Right. And then how do we move forward, and what new partnerships will we take on?
Sure.
And, so I'm building out criteria for new partners. I'm very thoughtful about who we're going to partner with, and because I respect our church, and I want our church's energies and efforts to be
there's an element of stewardship, and financial responsibility that comes along with that,
right?
But I think we have done a really good job of coming and seeing the show. The program, the Sunday morning experience, which is zero wrong with that.
Right.
But we miss it when we don't go.
Man, there's so much more, right, that to a believer's life than just sitting and being fed.
And you can be on mission in your community. You can be on mission in Loganville, where it's like we have to your neighbors, and it's so easy just to strike up conversation, but you do it in a way that doesn't have an angle. Like, you're just it's genuinely caring about your neighbor. We talk about the Great Commandment or the Great Commission, but we miss the Great Commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the compound sentence. It's not a break, right? And so loving your neighbor as yourself, man, so I was talking to somebody in our church, senior adult, the other day, and we were kind of lamenting of the fact that since the 1970s, we've lost the art of the front porch.
Yep.
People don't hang out on their front porches anymore. They go to the backyard, and then you see fences pop up, and we just separate. Fence. Yeah. And for what we think are well intended, we've lost the art of loving our neighbor as ourselves.
We've definitely become a garage community.
Yeah.
Most of us can't. I don't know about most of us. A lot of us can't park our cars in our garage, but we just walk in the garage and shut the door, and we never go outside again. There's so many things. So you brought up a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because we're talking about our partners and our trips and like things that are outside of our community.
Yeah.
But I think part of my role is also what we do locally.
Oh, sure.
It's like, and in training our viewers and our church members, like, hey, how can I be intentional with my neighbor? Like, what does that look like? And there's a phrase of that discipleship is all play every day, and I love that term and that thought pattern that we don't get to take the day off.
Yeah,
we should have eyes and mission all the time.
Yep.
And I think we make it so hard. I'll never forget this.
We just overcomplicate
We do.
it. Yeah.
I remember in Charlotte, this was in my early ministry, we were hanging out with some friends of ours at their house. And I can't remember if it was just a hangout or somebody's birthday or whatever, but there was this lady, my wife's friend, and so we're out there and we're talking, and she brought up, she goes, hey, my neighbors, they're across the street, they don't go to church anywhere, maybe they're going to be around today at this party, maybe you'll get a chance to talk to them. And sure enough, I did get introduced to him, and I did talk to her neighbor, the husband of her neighbor. And she was her name's Katie, and Katie was standing nearby and in that conversation. And I was just generally just asking questions to the guy. I really wasn't talking as much as asking him stuff. She later comes back to me, and she says, wow, that was awesome. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, the way you just talked to that guy and you just so nonchalantly asking questions about church and spirituality stuff without being creepy and weird.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was just being curious about him.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point that we overcomplicate. Like, I didn't have a 4 spiritual laws track.
Yeah.
I didn't do any of that.
If you died tonight, would you go to heaven?
No,
or
I
hell?
didn't even have that conversation. It's just simply, tell me about you, your spiritual background, where you've lived, where you've come from. Just being spiritually curious about people is the easiest way to share your gospel.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And I say this a lot, on Sunday mornings, like, during the welcome or whatever, we have a mechanism in place to connect people. Yeah. And that's, through our New Here card or Connect card or QR code, whatever you want to call it. And I say this because I genuinely mean it. As a team, as a staff team, our desire is to come alongside you in your faith journey.
Right.
Like, period. It's not to, tell you
take your space.
Yeah, you're doing all this stuff wrong, or we're not there to overrun you. It's just we want to come alongside you and understand like where you are in your faith journey, because we have all been at different points and are still going to be at different points, and people have come alongside us, and so it's just a real, like it's a real heart that we have for discipleship as a church, not to just say, if you died tonight, where would you go? And I grew up in a space where it wasn't a heart for discipleship. There wasn't a heart for it. There was a big heart for evangelism.
Right.
And that's where, you got on the kick of like, if you died tonight, where would you go, heaven or hell? And very direct questions without caring about the actual individual.
I think it almost became a process of like a merit badge almost, meaning like, hey, if I share the gospel or if I go on visitation or if I do these things, then I'm checking that box, and God is
like
now
grown-up
pleased.
Awanas.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but you went there. But yeah, it is
Sorry
like
for
that.
the Awana lovers.
It was like, hey, let me earn my evangelism patch.
Sure.
And there was no thought about, okay, I'm going to take on responsibility.
Yeah.
So if I share the gospel with this person, and they get saved, I think the thing in the church of the 90s, let me go back to that there was no, the idea or thought pattern was, and I know I'm stereotyping here, but like the thought pattern was, hey, as long as I get them in the doors of the church, then I've done my job. Even if I've shared the gospel with them outside of church, and got them to church, and I connected them to one of our pastors.
And now it's the staff's job.
Now I'm rolling it out. That's not what Matthew 28 says. That everyone is equally responsible for that discipleship of that person.
Yeah.
Now, we as a church will definitely come alongside and help you and guide you in that process. You're not alone to figure out all what to do by yourself, but at the same time, that's something that you're saying, like we genuinely care about people. Like the Next Step station isn't there just because it's a cool place to meet things and maybe get a free coffee mug. the next step station is there is like, hey, everybody has a next.
Sure.
And we want them to find that next and walk in it and grow in it and be in it,
When I'd argue too, I think there was so much good that came from the evangelism push of the 70s, 80s, 90s. And I would argue that we made a lot of converts. There are going to be a lot of people in heaven because of that push.
Hopefully.
But there are a lot of really bad disciples.
Well, I like to say it like this. And this is something that I never want to create. And I talk to people about this. Like, we weren't called to make spiritual orphans.
Yeah. That's a good point, man. That's a really good point.
And that's what a lot of modern evangelism did.
Yeah.
Was make a bunch of spiritual orphans.
Yeah. Now you're saved. Good luck.
I've said a prayer.
Yeah.
I maybe was connected to a church. Mm-hmm. Hope everything works out for you.
Well, I think, we miss that because we're so focused on the Great Commission to go and make disciples, and we've interpreted that as get them to come to Christ.
Go and make converts.
Go make converts and not disciples. What we miss is modeling the life of Jesus with the people that we're around. Like, Jesus had the 12, he had the 3, even tighter than that. But everywhere he went, look at what he modeled, the way he lived. And there's, early Christians in the first century, they just called it the way.
That's right.
They were practicing the way, following the way. There was no term Christianity. Right. There was no term Baptist. There was no term evangelical.
Right.
It was just the way.
Protestant didn't exist. Yeah.
And it was just modeling their life after what they saw Jesus do.
And unfortunately, we've, and pastors mentioned this before, like the word Christian was an actually derogatory term.
Yeah, it meant little Christ.
Little Christ.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like something that was worn as a badge of honor. Mm-hmm. So, and here's what I also hear a lot too. We all have giftedness, obviously, in different things.
Sure.
You're gifted at singing and spelling, and I'm not,
Facts.
Either one. And so
I've seen you fail at both.
Yeah. And it's okay, I'm good at other things. So,
that's so true.
But, I think that's like the standard cop-out is, I don't know if I know enough or if I'm not good enough, or I've been in church for 30 years, 40 years of my life, but I don't know if I could really teach somebody how to live for the God. And I'm like, oh gosh, please. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
I mean, you have enough sermon knowledge that, I don't know.
Well, and I would argue, they do know enough. What did Jesus do for you? How has he changed your life? And that's enough.
And some people think, well, I got to have this elaborate testament. No, in this moment, what did the grace do for you?
Yes. Yeah, that's enough. You don't need hermeneutics and apologetics and eschatology and soteriology. You don't have to
have an outline Bible.
No. It's just, what has the Lord done for you in your life? The tough part is if you can't answer that.
That's the scary part.
That's the scary part. Yeah. And, that's where you got to ask some tough questions.
Of your own self.
Yeah.
Right? And I think people feel guilty because they fall short, or they're not maybe living as close to Jesus as they want to.
Join the crowd.
I was going to say, all of us are in that moment at some point.
I'm a professional Christian,
Once a day, right?
Yeah.
We're at minimum, at most, we're probably 100 times a day away from the Lord, walking in a different direction. But, I think there's a lot of misnomers about having to have all the answers, having to know all the scriptures and know where every verse is found, and know, Brian loves apologetics, and I actually love it too. I like it a lot. But, Brian will be the first to admit to you, you'll never argue someone into heaven.
No.
So what good I'm not saying don't be prepared and don't be, seek understanding of those things, but don't use it as a cop-out not to do anything. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as stagnation in the Christian walk.
Yeah, you're always moving. It's perpetual.
You're either moving forward or going backwards. You know, I like it like if you're in a kayak in a river and you're pointing upstream. Well, if you stop paddling, what happens? Mm-hmm. You're going to go backwards. And it's not that please don't misinterpret that to be works, based.
Sure.
But we are all always striving to glorify God with our life, right? And so to me, that's part of that paddle. And your paddle today might just be that you cried out to Jesus because you were having a horrible day. Mm-hmm. That might be your one-stroke paddle for the day.
My devotion this morning was James chapter 1. If any of you lacks wisdom,
let him
ask God, and He'll give it freely,
abundantly,
without holding back.
Right.
Whatever version you read. That's the Kellan Revised Standard. Mm-hmm. And man, it was just a reminder to me, like God is ready, able, and willing to just pour out His blessings, to pour out His wisdom, to pour out His presence.
Yeah.
If we're ready, willing, and able to ask.
The most fun testimonies are when I hear people go, yeah, I was talking to so-and-so, and I just asked them some questions, and, I don't know what I said, but the Holy Spirit just spoke to this person. I'm like, that's it. Yeah. That's the one. That's the way it works.
What's the blind man in Scripture who, was healed river, and the Pharisees asked him, like, who did this?
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know. All I can tell you is I was blind, now I see.
Now I got it.
Man, I love that story. And that's all of our stories. Like, here's what I know. I was here. I was far from God, even though I was in church or whatever. And then the Lord did this, and now my life looks like this. And there have been ebbs and flows and ups and downs, but it's an upward trajectory, you know?
It's funny because every pastor worth their salt has a good airplane story.
That's so true. That's so true.
So I had one actually in Nepal.
I don't.
You will one day.
I put earbuds in. I don't want to talk to anybody.
That has become the norm.
Even my wife, like we were on a long flight, and she was wanting to talk. I was like,
nope. It's not sleepy time.
I'm going to sleep.
Well, God, again, it was a God thing. I was like, I typically get that way, especially on long trips. But God interacted me with this guy, and I think this is what you got to look at. Okay, like why is this happening, and understand. Okay, there's a spiritual context of why things happen. Mm-hmm. So a guy left his phone on the seat in the waiting area pre-boarding.
Yeah.
So we got up to get in line to go board. Well, I noticed where he was sitting. I saw his phone, and he was in line. I went and grabbed his phone. Now, we're getting ready to get on the plane to go to Nepal.
Yeah.
Or at that time, it was our layover was in Qatar. So I grabbed his phone. I walk up to him and say, hey, man, here's your phone. You left it on the seat. He's like, oh, my gosh. His eyes were big as saucers. And
sure, his whole life. Right?
Yeah, he's like, oh, my gosh, I would have been so messed up without this. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, you would have.
You'd have been toast.
And so my comment was, yeah, I saved your life. And he goes, you did. And so that we began this dialogue about, where we're going and all those things. Well, we're in line, so it's like kind of hard to have a conversation because you're talking and I'm trying to walk forward at the same time. Well, anyway, he turns out to sit right next to me in the plane. And he's a young guy, late 20s, young professional. And we get to talking, and, people love to talk about themselves. Mm-hmm. So I just let him talk.
Yeah.
He's like in the cryptocurrency world. Mm-hmm. And I probably know way too much than I need to know about that.
Yeah, sure.
So I like just peppering him questions, And he shows me this diagram. He asked me if I've ever heard of this story, and it was like he didn't call it a theological story, but it was basically a secular worldview. Mm-hmm. And he draws it out for me on this paper. And I'm like, oh, God, thank you so much. Softball. He just teed it up for me, right? And so it was perfect because it was all about loving your neighbor. Mm-hmm. But he didn't call it the Great Commission or the Great Commandment. He didn't talk about that, but that's what it was built on.
Sure.
And so we just launched into this spiritual conversation. Now, he was super intellectual, and he said that he'd studied religions and stuff. And
did you ask him how to spell?
No, we didn't talk about spelling.
All right. Just curious.
I stayed away from spelling. I drew stick figures. But I did. I used the Life on Mission 3 circles. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
It's a great tool. And he drew out his thing, and then I drew out my thing, and I asked him what he thought about it. And that was as simple as the conversation was. Did he get saved? No. his family actually grew up here in, he kind of grew up here in Loganville.
Yeah.
So it was kind of just a cool story. But I share that to say that we just need to be thinking about where we're at, what we're doing, who's around us. Mm-hmm. You never know what God's going to put in your lap, you know. And every time you're on an airplane, you got them tracked.
That's true.
So,
especially a flight to Nepal.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible. Okay, so I did this with Brandon. I did this with Thomas Hammond.
Oh, boy.
And so I'm going to do it with you.
We
have, let's do 2 minutes. So you got to answer these quickly. No stories.
All right. First thing that comes to mind.
These are rapid fire.
Okay, let's
Okay, you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Sweet or spicy food?
Spicy.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee with sugar.
Even more? Cream?
Lots.
So
of both.
You drink cream and sugar with a splash of coffee?
I drink dessert.
I judge you and Brian so much for that. I like black coffee, man. Sorry. I drink tea in the afternoons. Okay. Your go-to karaoke song?
Ooh. Probably Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It.
Really?
Yeah.
This is how we do it. Yeah, let's go. We'll sing that one Sunday.
He's a pastor now, too, so.
Yeah? I did know that. Not the talk show host, the former singer.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Which pizza topping is your go-to? Like, what's your favorite pizza?
Standard pepperoni.
Really?
Yeah.
Not adventurous at all?
Nah, I mean, it's pizza.
No. What's your dream car?
Ooh. Oh, man. I know it was rapid fire. I'm going to say Eleanor. 1965 Mustang.
Oh, like what?
Gone in 60 Seconds, Eleanor.
Okay. Well, thank you for the context.
Yeah.
I've never seen that movie. What is your favorite thing about your job?
My favorite thing about my current role is taking people to do things they never thought they could do in places they never thought they would be.
That's cool. What is one bucket list item you want to fulfill this year?
Oh, I don't know. To learn how to spell.
Which leads to my next question. What's your favorite word? That's a joke. You don't have to answer that.
I do have one. I have one for you.
All right.
One of my favorite words is tomfoolery.
Tomfoolery. I was going to say stripers, but...
No.
Anyway. All right. Favorite song or musical genre?
Or shenanigans. I like shenanigans.
That's a good one. Favorite musical genre? Like what do you turn on the radio?
Yeah, that's not easy. I'm multifaceted guy. So like it could be anything.
Okay, so you're going on a road trip. What is the song you put on?
It would be all over the place.
Yeah. Mine's Ramblin' Man. All My Brothers.
Ooh. Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love that too.
Like Southern rock.
So my friend Gerald, he's a worship pastor in Charlotte. He did this recently on his Facebook page. I know this is not a short answer, but he said, "Hey, what's road trip? What's on your playlist?"
Yeah.
So I had everything from rap to 70s to 80s hair bands, boy bands, 90s boy bands. But,
You're missing one. Very important.
And then I think, so this would be my answer to the question. I'm circling back to this. I think 90s alternative music would be my favorite genre.
Come on, Trent. You're missing Kellan Monroe, available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music.
Well, that was a given. Everybody
YouTube,
knew that.
Everywhere you stream music. Yeah, Kellan Monroe, Kellanmonroe. I would love for you to listen.
Yeah, definitely.
I would go back and change your answer to say that. That'd be great.
Do you do a cover of Rambling Man?
I can.
Let's do it.
You can make a guest appearance.
I'll play the cowbell.
All right. 2 more questions. Cat or dogs?
Dogs.
All right. Favorite child?
Depends on the day.
I asked Brandon the same question.
What was Brandon's answer?
He wouldn't answer.
No, mine definitely depends on the day.
Yeah,
right now, Carson's in the doghouse, so nope.
Oh,
I know he's my favorite.
Brandon's answer is Aaron.
Sure, probably.
This is
his only daughter. Yeah. I didn't have the joy of daughters, so I get to equally beat up on my kids.
Oh. Joy is
a good,
not literally,
physically. Is,
my gosh! All right. Oh, that's fun. Okay,
we had a good day.
So if you want more information about missions, the work that we're doing as a church, or maybe you want to go on a mission trip, you feel the Lord kind of impressing you to do that. Trent at T Peacock.
Nope.
No.
Trent at churchonmain.net.
Why is yours that? Mine's not. Mine's K Monroe.
Because
I guess nobody knows how to spell.
I know people.
Okay. Trent at churchonmain.net. Or you can just find him at church, and he'd love to connect with you. Again, I said this earlier in the podcast. We know a lot of you are going through some really difficult things, and we want to help. We really, really want to help. So if you want to get connected with a licensed professional counselor, Trent's your man. He can connect you. He connected me, and I'm going through it right now. And so I'd encourage you to do the same. It's a resource provided by the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, and we can help you with costs or whatever you need.
Well, more specifically, we can get you in front of good counselors.
Yeah,
that's always the thing is, who do I go to and how do I get good people?
Yep. And the one I have is great. So,
good. I'm glad you love it.
Anyway, I've had a great experience. So super grateful for you. Thank you so much for tuning in to this hour and 11-minute podcast.
Hey, pretty good.
Not bad. That had nothing to do with the sermon on Sunday. So hope you enjoy getting to know.
The sermon was great. Go listen to it.
Yeah, go back last week. Hope you enjoy getting to know Trent a little bit better. Yeah. As always, like, subscribe, comment, share, all the things. If you've made it this far and are listening to this, we love you dearly, and we'll see you Sunday.